On the distant planet of Zoreth 7, night had fallen over the sprawling cities made of shimmering crystal towers. The air was cool, and soft glows from bioluminescent plants lit up the streets like a sea of tiny stars. In one quiet corner of the city, a group of young alien children huddled close together near a glowing hearth. Their large, curious eyes reflected the light as they listened intently to their elder, Kalen. His voice was calm but carried an edge of warning, making the children lean closer, their small hands gripping each other tightly. Long ago, Kalen began, his deep voice resonating through the stillness. There was a species that lived among the stars. They called themselves humans. He paused for effect, letting the word hang in the air. The children shifted uncomfortably, their antennae twitching with unease. Humans were not a topic discussed lightly on Zoreth 7. They were creatures of legend, beings so dangerous that their memory had been preserved only in whispers and bedtime stories meant to frighten disobedient young ones. They looked much like us in some ways. Kellen continued, gesturing with his long, slender fingers. 2 arms, 2 legs, heads atop their bodies. But inside, they were different. Humans were clever, yes, but also reckless. They built machines to travel across the stars, yet they destroyed everything they touched. Their hunger knew no limits. One of the children, a girl named Lyra, tilted her head slightly. Her bright green skin shimmered faintly under the glow of the hearth. She was always full of questions, even when others told her to stay silent. "But Elder Kalen," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "were they real, or are they just part of the stories?" Kalen turned his gaze toward her, his golden eyes narrowing slightly. For a moment, he seemed to consider whether to answer or dismiss her question. Then, with a slow nod, he replied, "They were real, child. Real enough to leave scars across the stars that we can still see today." He pointed upward, toward the sky visible through the transparent dome above them. "Those dark patches you see, some say they are remnants of worlds consumed by human greed." The other children gasped, their wide eyes darting between Kalen and the heavens above. Lyra, however, wasn't satisfied. She furrowed her brow, thinking hard. If humans were real, then why did everyone speak of them as if they were monsters? Were they truly all bad, or was there more to the story? Kalen noticed her expression and leaned forward, his tone growing darker. Humans fought endlessly, with each other, with nature, with anyone who stood in their way. They created weapons so powerful that entire planets could vanish in an instant. And worse, they never learned. Even when faced with destruction, they chose war over peace. A shiver ran down Lyra's spine, but it wasn't entirely fear. It was curiosity, a burning desire to know more. As the other children began to murmur nervously, she stayed silent, her mind racing. That night, as the group dispersed and returned to their homes, Lyra couldn't shake the image of those fabled humans from her thoughts. Who were they really? And why did they haunt the dreams of her people? Later, lying in her bed, Lyra stared at the ceiling, her heart pounding with excitement and dread. Tomorrow, she decided, she would sneak into the archives. Surely, there had to be more information about these mysterious beings. Maybe, just maybe, the truth was hidden somewhere in the forbidden records. With that thought, she finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that her quest for answers would lead her far beyond anything she could have imagined. Far away from the glowing cities of Zoreth 7, in the vast emptiness of space, a small human spaceship drifted silently among the stars. The ship was called the Eclipse Asterisk, and its crew had been traveling for months in search of new worlds to explore. Inside the control room, Captain Rachel Hayes stood with her arms crossed, staring at a blinking monitor. Her sharp blue eyes narrowed as she studied the strange signal that had appeared on their screens. "This doesn't make sense," muttered Lieutenant Brian Foster, who sat nearby at his workstation. He adjusted his glasses nervously, his fingers tapping rapidly on the keyboard. "The signal. It's old. Really old. It looks like one of Earth's broadcasts from centuries ago." Rachel frowned. That's impossible. We're light years away from Earth. How could something like this even reach us? She leaned closer to the screen, trying to make sense of the jumbled data. The signal was faint, broken, but unmistakably human. Fragments of music, voices, and static crackled softly through the speakers. Brian shook his head. It's not just reaching us. Someone, or something, is repeating it, amplifying it, like they want us to hear it. His voice wavered slightly, betraying his growing unease. Rachel straightened up and glanced at the rest of the crew. Everyone was tense, their faces pale under the dim lights of the ship. They all knew what this could mean. They weren't alone out here. But whoever, or whatever, was sending the signal didn't seem friendly. We need to investigate, Rachel said firmly, breaking the silence. Set a course for the source of the signal. Let's see what we're dealing with. The journey took several hours, during which no one spoke much. The hum of the engines filled the ship, and the weight of uncertainty pressed down on everyone. When they finally arrived, they found themselves staring at a massive structure floating eerily in the darkness of space. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a mix of organic curves and metallic edges, pulsating faintly with an inner glow. What is that thing? Brian whispered, his voice barely audible. Rachel didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed her helmet and motioned for two other crew members, Anna and David, to join her. Together, they boarded a smaller shuttle and approached the mysterious object. As they drew closer, intricate patterns etched into the surface became visible. Some looked like writing, while others resembled pictures or symbols. When they landed and stepped outside, the air felt heavy, almost oppressive. Rachel led the way cautiously, her hand resting on the weapon strapped to her side. The walls of the structure seemed alive, shifting subtly as if watching them. Then, without warning, a low rumble echoed through the chamber. "Did you hear that?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. Before anyone could respond, bright lights flared to life, illuminating the interior. Murals covered the walls, vivid depictions of humanoid figures surrounded by fire and destruction. In some images, the humans were fighting each other. In others, they were attacking alien creatures. Rachel froze, her stomach sinking as she realized what she was looking at. "This is how they see us," she murmured, her voice hollow. "As destroyers." Suddenly, the ground beneath them vibrated, and a synthetic voice boomed through the chamber. "You are not welcome here." Rachel's heart raced. She turned to her team. "We need to get out of here. Now." As they hurried back toward the shuttle, the structure began to change around them, the walls closing in menacingly. Whatever this place was, it clearly didn't want them there. And as the Eclipse Asterisk's crew escaped into the safety of their ship, one question burned in Rachel's mind. Who, or what, had created such a terrifying monument to humanity's legacy? Back on Zorath 7, Lyra couldn't stop thinking about the story of the humans. The more she tried to forget it, the more it lingered in her mind like a shadow. That night, after everyone in her family had gone to sleep, she slipped out of bed and quietly left her home. Her destination was the archives, a massive building filled with records of the past, guarded by strict rules and even stricter overseers. But Lyra had always been good at sneaking around. The streets were empty except for the soft glow of the bioluminescent plants lining the pathways. Lyra moved quickly, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. She knew she wasn't supposed to be out this late, but the pull of curiosity was stronger than any rule. When she reached the archives, she pressed herself against the cool crystal wall and peeked around the corner. Two guards stood near the entrance, their glowing staffs casting faint light onto the ground. Lyra crouched low and waited, watching carefully. After a few minutes, one of the guards yawned and walked away, leaving the other alone. Taking a deep breath, Lyra darted forward, staying close to the shadows. She slipped inside just as the remaining guard turned his back. Once inside, she pressed herself flat against the wall, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she caught her breath. The archives were enormous, filled with rows upon rows of glowing crystals that stored information. Each crystal contained recordings, images, and documents from Zoreth 7's history. Lara didn't know exactly what she was looking for, but she knew it had to do with humans. She tiptoed through the aisles until she found a section labeled Ancient Encounters. Her antennae twitched with anticipation as she picked up a crystal and inserted it into a nearby console. The screen flickered to life, showing old footage of human ships traveling through space. There were recordings of battles, explosions lighting up alien skies, cries of panic filling the air. Lara's eyes widened as she listened to intercepted transmissions from Earth. The voices were strange yet familiar, speaking languages she didn't understand but somehow felt connected to. One recording played a speech from a human leader, his tone fierce and determined. Another showed a mother singing softly to her child, her voice carrying a warmth that made Lyra's heart ache. But not everything was peaceful. Some files detailed devastating conflicts between humans and Zorethians. Entire colonies had been wiped out before humanity mysteriously vanished. Lyra shivered as she read about the destruction they left behind. Yet there was something else too, something hidden beneath the layers of fear and anger. These humans weren't just monsters. They were survivors, fighting to protect their homes and families, just like anyone else. As the hours passed, Lyra became lost in the stories. She realized that humans weren't so different from her own people. They dreamed, they loved, they feared, and they made mistakes. For the first time, she understood why the elders told those bedtime stories. It wasn't just to scare children. It was to remind them of the dangers of unchecked ambition and greed. Suddenly, a noise startled her, a soft clink echoing through the silent room. Lyra froze, her heart leaping into her throat. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Someone was coming. Panicking, she grabbed the crystal she'd been studying and stuffed it into her pocket. Then, staying low, she crept toward the exit, praying she wouldn't get caught. When she finally emerged into the cool night air, Lyra felt a mix of relief and exhilaration. She had uncovered secrets no one else dared to look for, and now she couldn't wait to share them with someone who might understand. Her older brother, Jax, would know what to do next. The next morning, Lyra found Jax tinkering with his hoverbike in the family's workshop. Her older brother was always good with machines, and he often spent hours fixing things or building gadgets. When he saw her standing there, his brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" he asked, noticing the serious look on her face. "I need your help," Lyra said quickly, pulling the crystal from her pocket. She explained everything. The story Callan had told, her late-night trip to the archives, and what she'd discovered about humans. Jax listened silently, his dark green skin glowing faintly in the light of the workshop. When she finished, he let out a low whistle. "You went into the archives alone. Do you have any idea how much trouble you'd be in if you got caught?" he asked, shaking his head. But despite his scolding tone, his eyes sparkled with curiosity. He reached for the crystal and turned it over in his hands. "So, this is what they don't want us to see." Lyra nodded eagerly. "It's not just scary stories, Jax. Humans, they're more than that. They'd made mistakes, yes, but they also created beautiful things. And now they're gone. I think we should find out why." Jax hesitated. Helping Lyra meant breaking rules, and possibly getting into serious trouble. But deep down, he couldn't resist the thrill of uncovering secrets. After a moment, he grinned. "All right, little sister, let's figure this out. But we'll need better tools if we're going to dig deeper." Together, they snuck back into the archives that night, armed with a small device Jax had built to bypass security locks. The machine hummed softly as they worked their way deeper into restricted sections, searching for answers. Finally, they stumbled upon a file labeled First Contact. It contained detailed logs from Zorethian scouts who had encountered humans centuries ago. As they read through the records, A clearer picture began to emerge. The first meeting between humans and Zorathians hadn't been hostile. It had been cautious, even hopeful. Humans had been explorers then, eager to learn about new civilizations, but misunderstandings soon spiraled into conflict. Humans acted impulsively, while Zorathians reacted defensively. Fear fueled both sides, turning minor clashes into full-blown wars. One entry stood out to Lyra. It described a final battle where human forces were overwhelmed by Zorathian technology. Instead of surrendering, the humans retreated, disappearing entirely from known space. The log ended with a chilling note. Their absence is no victory. What will they become when they return? They didn't vanish forever, Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. They're still out there, somewhere. Jax frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. If they come back, do you think they'll remember us? Or will they see us the same way we see them, as monsters? Before Lyra could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed nearby. Someone was coming. Panicked, they scrambled to gather the data and erase their tracks. Just as the door opened and a guard stepped inside, Jax activated a small distraction device he brought along. A burst of sparks shot across the room, drawing the guard's attention long enough for them to slip away unnoticed. Back home, Lyra stared at the stolen files, her mind racing. If humans were still alive, somewhere among the stars, then maybe it wasn't too late to change the story. Maybe fear didn't have to rule the galaxy. She glanced at Jax, who was already working on another gadget. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone in wanting to rewrite the past, and perhaps the future too. On the human spaceship Eclipse *, Captain Rachel Hayes sat in her quarters, staring at the data collected from the mysterious alien structure. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubts. The murals they had seen depicted humans as destructive forces, creatures of chaos and ruin. But that wasn't the whole truth, was it? Humanity had its flaws, yes, but it also had dreams, creativity, and the capacity for kindness. Why did these aliens see them only as monsters? Lieutenant Brian Foster knocked softly on her door before stepping inside. He carried a datapad filled with new findings from the transmission analysis. "Captain," he said hesitantly, "I've been going over the signal again. It's not just repeating fragments of Earth's old broadcasts. Some parts are altered." Rachel frowned. "Altered how?" Brian adjusted his glasses nervously. "It's like someone took pieces of our history, the wars, the conflicts, and exaggerated them. Made them worse than they really were. They're painting us as something we're not, or at least not entirely." Rachel leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "So they're scared of us, scared enough to twist the truth and turn us into bogeymen. It makes sense if you think about it," Brian continued. "If they believe we're dangerous, they'll do anything to keep us away. Fear is a powerful motivator." Rachel nodded slowly. She thought about the structure they had visited, the way it seemed alive, watching their every move. Whoever built it clearly didn't want humans around. But why? And why now, after centuries of silence? Something didn't add up. The next day, Rachel called a meeting with her senior crew members. She shared Brian's findings and proposed a risky idea. Send a message back. Not a demand or a threat, but an explanation. A chance to show that humanity wasn't just the sum of its worst moments. "We need to tell them who we really are," Rachel said firmly. "Not perfect, but willing to learn. If fear is driving them, maybe understanding can change that." Anna, one of the communications officers, raised an eyebrow. "Do you really think they'll listen? After everything we've seen, they don't seem interested in talking." "They might not," Rachel admitted, "but we have to try. If we don't, we're letting their fear define us, and maybe destroy us." With the crew's reluctant agreement, Anna began crafting the message. It included images of Earth's beauty, its oceans, mountains, and forests. There were recordings of music, laughter, and children playing. They added explanations of humanity's struggles and efforts to grow beyond its violent past. The final piece was a simple statement: We don't want to fight. We just want to understand. When the message was ready, Rachel gave the order to transmit it. For hours, the crew waited anxiously, unsure if anyone would respond. Then, late that night, the monitors flickered to life. A new signal came through, not aggressive, but cautious. It contained images of alien cities, art, and families. At the center was a single phrase written in broken English. "Who are you?" Rachel smiled faintly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Someone out there was listening. Someone wanted to know more. Unbeknownst to the crew of the Eclipse light years away on Zoreth 7, Lyra and Jax watched the same message play on a stolen screen. Their eyes widened as they saw glimpses of Earth and heard the voices of humans for the first time. Lyra felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Maybe Kalen's stories weren't the whole truth. Maybe humans weren't just the monsters of bedtime tales. Jax looked at his sister, his expression serious. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "What do we do now?" Lyra didn't hesitate. "We help them. We prove that fear doesn't have to win." The message from the humans played over and over on the stolen screen in Jax and Lyra's secret hideout. The images of Earth were unlike anything they had ever seen. Blue oceans, green forests, and creatures that moved freely under wide-open skies. The music was strange but beautiful, and the voices carried a warmth that made Lyra's chest feel tight. For the first time, she realized that humans weren't just figures from scary stories. They were real beings with lives, hopes, and dreams. "We have to show this to someone," Lyra said, her voice trembling with excitement. "If people see this, maybe they'll stop being so afraid." Jax shook his head firmly. "No way. If we take this to the elders, they'll shut it down before anyone even gets a chance to look at it. Remember what happened last time someone tried to talk about humans? They silenced them." Lyra frowned, knowing he was right. The fear of humans ran deep in Zorethian society. Generations had been taught to see them as threats, not neighbors. But Lyra couldn't let that stop her. She glanced at the screen again, her resolve hardening. "Then we'll do it ourselves. We'll share the message with others, people who might listen." Over the next few days, Lyra and Jax worked carefully, copying the human transmission onto portable devices. They started small, showing it to friends they trusted, other young aliens curious enough to question the stories they'd been told. At first, reactions were mixed. Some recoiled in fear, unable to look past the warnings of their elders. But others stayed, watching the images and listening to the sounds with wide eyes. "They're like us," one of Lyra's friends whispered after seeing the video. "They laugh. They sing. They care for each other." Word spread slowly but surely. More and more Zorethians began gathering in hidden places to watch the message. Questions bubbled up. Who were these humans? Why had they reached out now? And most importantly, could they really be trusted? Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse Captain Rachel Hayes waited anxiously for any sign of a response. Days turned into a week, and just as hope began to fade, another signal came through. This one was clearer, almost deliberate. It showed glimpses of Zoreth 7, the glowing cities, the vibrant plant life, and the faces of its people. In broken English, it read, "We hear you. Prove your words." Rachel smiled faintly, relief washing over her. "This is it," she said to Brian, who stood beside her. "Our chance to make contact, to show them we're not the monsters they think we are." With the crew's help, Rachel prepared a second message. This time, they included live footage of the Eclipse's crew going about their daily routines, working, eating, laughing together. They added recordings of personal stories from the crew members, sharing their hopes for peace and understanding. Finally, they ended with an invitation. "Let's meet. Let's talk." When the message was sent, Rachel felt a flicker of doubt. What if the Zorethians rejected it? What if fear won out in the end? But there was no turning back now. Humanity's future in this part of the galaxy depended on taking this step. Back on Zorath 7, Lyra and Jax intercepted the new message. Their hearts raced as they watched the humans speak directly to them, their expressions open and sincere. Lyra felt tears welling up in her eyes. These weren't the monsters from the Bedtime stories. They were people, just like her. "We have to respond," Lyra said firmly. "We can't let this opportunity slip away." Jax hesitated, his antennae twitching nervously. "What will we say? If we get this wrong, it could ruin everything." Lyra thought for a moment, then smiled. "We tell the truth, that we're scared too, but we want to try. That's all anyone can ask for." Together, they crafted a reply, using simple words and images to express their desire for peace. When it was ready, they transmitted it into the stars, hoping it would reach the humans who had dared to reach out first. For the first time in centuries, two species separated by fear and misunderstanding took a tentative step toward bridging the gap between them. The response from Zorath 7 reached the Eclipse late one night, lighting up the ship's communication monitors with a soft glow. Captain Rachel Hayes was in her quarters when the alert sounded, and she rushed to the control room, her heart pounding. Lieutenant Brian Foster was already there, his eyes wide as he read the incoming message. "They replied," Brian said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They actually replied." Rachel leaned over his shoulder, scanning the images and text. The Zorathians had sent pictures of their glowing cities, their families, and their art. There were no weapons, no threats, just an honest attempt to show who they were. The message ended with a single line written in halting English. "We are scared too, but we want to try." Rachel felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't expected this, hadn't dared to hope for such openness. "They're willing to meet us halfway," she murmured. Turning to the crew, she gave a small, determined smile. "This is it, our chance to prove that humanity isn't just the sum of its worst moments." The next day, Rachel called a meeting with her senior officers. Together, they planned how to respond. They decided to send coordinates for a neutral location, a small, uninhabited moon orbiting a distant planet. It was far enough from both Zorath 7 and Earth to feel safe, but close enough for a face-to-face meeting. Along with the coordinates, they included a final message. "We'll come unarmed. We only want to talk." As the Eclipse set course for the designated meeting point, Lyra and Jax worked feverishly on Zorath 7 to rally support for their cause. They knew not everyone would agree with their decision to trust the humans. Some elders saw the messages exchanged between the species as reckless and dangerous. Kalen himself confronted Lyra in private, his golden eyes sharp with concern. "You're playing with fire, child," he warned. "These humans may seem harmless now, but history tells us otherwise." Lyra met his gaze without flinching. "History also tells us what fear can do, Elder. If we let fear guide us, nothing will ever change. I believe these humans want peace. Don't you think it's worth finding out?" Kalen sighed deeply, his expression softening. He didn't answer, but he didn't stop her either. That was all the permission Lyra needed. With a small group of volunteers, including Jax, Lyra boarded a Zorathian shuttle and set off toward the meeting point. The journey was tense. None of them knew what to expect. When they arrived at the moon, they found the Eclipse waiting, its sleek form gleaming under the pale light of a distant star. Rachel stepped out first, her hands raised to show she carried no weapons. Behind her stood Brian and a few other crew members, their faces tense but hopeful. On the other side, Lyra emerged from the shuttle, her green skin glowing faintly. For a long moment, the two groups simply stared at each other, separated by centuries of fear and misunderstanding. Finally, Rachel took a step forward. "My name is Rachel," she said slowly, her voice steady. "Thank you for coming." Lyra hesitated, then stepped forward as well. "I'm Lyra," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We wanted to meet you." Neither side moved for a moment, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Then Rachel extended her hand, palm open, a gesture of peace. Lyra looked at it, uncertainty flickering across her face. Slowly, tentatively, she reached out and touched Rachel's hand. It was a small act, but it carried the promise of something greater. Two species, divided by fear and history, had taken the first step toward understanding. As they began to talk, sharing fragments of their worlds and lives, hope bloomed where distrust had once festered. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, it felt possible. The meeting on the moon lasted for hours, though it felt like both an instant and an eternity. Rachel and Lyra sat across from each other, their differences plain to see but somehow less important than the shared determination in their eyes. Around them, the crews of the Eclipse and the Zorathian shuttle exchanged cautious glances, some smiling nervously while others remained stiff with uncertainty. But as the conversation unfolded, walls began to crumble. Rachel explained humanity's long journey through the stars, the mistakes made, the lessons learned, and the hope that drove them forward. She spoke of Earth's beauty and fragility, of how humans had nearly destroyed their own home before realizing the value of cooperation and care. Lyra listened intently, her antennae twitching with every word. When it was her turn to speak, she described Zorath 7's history, the scars left by ancient wars, and the stories passed down to keep fear alive. "We were taught to see you as monsters," she admitted softly. "But now, I think we were wrong." Jax chimed in, his voice steady. "Fear kept us safe, but it also made us blind. Seeing you here, talking to us, it proves there's more to your kind than the stories say." Brian nodded, adjusting his glasses. "And maybe there's more to yours too. We've only ever seen glimpses, shadows. Now we can learn the truth together." As the discussions continued, small gestures helped bridge the gap between the two groups. Rachel offered a piece of fruit from Earth, a bright orange citrus that smelled sweet and tangy. Lyra hesitated before taking a bite, her face lighting up with surprise at the burst of flavor. In return, she handed Rachel a glowing crystal native to Zorath 7, explaining its significance in their culture. These simple exchanges broke the tension, replacing it with laughter and curiosity. By the time they parted ways, plans had been made for future meetings. The Zorathians agreed to share more about their world, while the humans promised to introduce technology that could benefit both species without causing harm. It wasn't a perfect agreement. There were still doubts and fears, but it was a start, a fragile, hopeful beginning. Back on Zorath 7, Lyra faced the elders, who had gathered to hear her report. Kalen stood among them, his expression unreadable. When Lyra finished speaking, silence filled the chamber. Finally, one elder spoke. "You took a great risk, child. What if they betray us?" "They might," Lyra replied honestly. "But what if they don't? Fear has ruled us for too long. If we never try, we'll never know what's possible." To everyone's surprise, Kalen stepped forward. "She's right," he said, his voice firm. "The stories we tell shape our reality. Perhaps it's time to write a new one." On the Eclipse, Rachel gathered her crew to reflect on what had happened. "This isn't just about survival anymore," she told them. "It's about connection, about proving that we're better than the worst versions of ourselves." In the weeks and months that followed, communication between humans and Zorathians grew stronger. Shared projects brought their peoples closer, and slowly, the old tales of terror began to fade. New stories emerged, ones of courage, understanding, and unity. One evening, as Lyra gazed up at the stars alongside Rachel during another meeting, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. The universe was vast and full of unknowns, but for the first time, it didn't feel quite so lonely. Together, they had rewritten the ending to a story once defined by fear. And in doing so, they reminded everyone, human and Zorathian alike, that even the scariest bedtime stories could become dreams of hope if given the chance.